The Sacramento Kings and Golden State Warriors full playoff schedule is out. And today at Kings practice, we had some interesting comments from a couple players and head coach Mike Brown, including Domantas Sabonis talking about the pressure or lack thereof on the Sacramento Kings in this return to the playoffs. We're 3 days away from Kings and Warriors. Time to turn up the heat right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time. Time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all postseason long. Boy, that feels so good to say. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. A championship team is about each player being the perfect fit. Same thing with your vehicle. So for parts that fit, head to eBay Motors and look for the green check mark. Stay in the game with eBay Guaranteed Fit. ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports reporter and producer for ABC 10 News. I'm recording in my corner office here at the ABC 10 studios. Got back here and I'm handling newscasts on this Wednesday night after attending Sacramento Kings practice, and you're going to see some footage from practice and hear some comments in a little bit. Also on today's show, it's a longer one because earlier this week, I was joined in studio by my colleagues here at ABC 10, my partner in sports, Kevin John, and then Walt Gray, who's one of our lead anchors here, and he's worked in sports and worked in news in Sacramento for a very long time, since the 80s. So he's very familiar with the Kings, very familiar with their background and what the Kings mean to the city. So the three of us had a long, extended conversation in our studio just about this Sacramento Kings series, previewing the series, sharing our opinions and thoughts on a wide variety of subjects around this Kings versus Warriors series. So I hope you'll stick around and enjoy that. But before we get to that, let's talk about Kings practice today. The first thing I noticed right away is, first off, they let us see absolutely nothing. Normally we get into the very tail end and we can see maybe the end of some scrimmages or the very, very tail end of anything that they're working on. We got there and it was just free throw drills that they do to end practice. We got there literally right as they were meeting together at the center court after their kind of team meeting at the end of practice to dap everybody up and to come together, basically say 1, 2, 3, go Kings, or 1, 2, 3 together. And then they split off to their individual layup or free throw work, and then they dip. They're done. We got there right as the scrum was finishing, or that gathering, that huddle was finishing. We saw nothing. Mike Brown and the rest of the Kings coaching staff are keeping everything under wraps, which is understandable going into this playoff series with the Golden State Warriors, but still we were able to kind of get the vibes of the place. And typically you'll hear like music bumping or things like that. It was a quiet gym. This team was clearly focused. However, the attitude was jovial. It was relaxed. It was calm. It was ready. You wouldn't be able to tell by looking at these guys that they were about to go into a massive playoff series. And a lot of that has to do with the comments of Domantas Sabonis that I'm about to play for you here in just a second. This Kings team is not operating like there is any pressure on them. And that's what Domantas Sabonis told us at the press conferences today.
No pressure at all. We're ready. We're doing our job. We're going to treat it just like we did starting in training camp. We all believe in each other. We all trust in each other. So we just got to go and play our game.
Compared to the Golden State Warriors, I agree. There is not really pressure on the Sacramento Kings in that sense. All expectations are that the Warriors, being the defending champions, should knock off the Sacramento Kings in their first time back in the playoffs. However, I do think there is a little bit of pressure on the Sacramento Kings in the sense that you want to show that you weren't just a fluke. You want to show that you belong. Like if the Kings were to lose this series to the Golden State Warriors, even if it is expected, I would want to go into the offseason knowing, okay, the Kings clearly belong here. Like think back to when at the beginning of the Weber era, the Sacramento Kings started their playoffs and took on the Utah Jazz. They lost that series to the Jazz, but we left that series going, okay, the Kings belong here, right? And over the next few years, of course, they built into that juggernaut in the Western Conference that should have, but didn't win an NBA championship. So I want that same feeling leaving this series, win or lose, that the Sacramento Kings absolutely belong here. So I think there's that pressure, plus the pressure of you don't want to be swept when you have home court advantage in that opening round. But I don't think these Kings are too concerned by it. We also spoke with Mike Brown. I'm going to play another Domantas Sabonis clip for you in a second. But we also spoke with Mike Brown, and I asked him about establishing a Northern California rivalry with the Golden State Warriors and what that would mean for the NBA.
First of all, I'm not sure if it's a rivalry yet, but if it can end up being that, then fantastic. I think rivalries are great in any competition out there. It adds extra juice to the whole environment or atmosphere whenever two teams play each other. So I'm all for it. I wouldn't say it's quite there yet, but if it does get there, it'd be awesome.
Domantas Sabonis dropped an interesting line. I asked Domantas Sabonis about Keegan Murray, and I was just going into it trying to figure out, are they trying to simplify things for Keegan? Because he's a rookie, and he's a starter on a playoff team with expectations on their shoulders. That's not an easy position for a rookie to be in. But the reason why I'm playing this clip is because Domantas Sabonis drops a really interesting line in the middle of it that I will talk about on the other side. But let's see if you catch it.
There's going to be a lot of people talking to him, a lot of stuff. He's going to be guarding one of the best players in the league, and just it's a team defensive effort, and we all got to be there for him.
He's going to be guarding one of the best players in the league. Did you catch that? People are trying to connect the dots and figure out who that player is. Steph Curry makes the most sense in terms of one of the best players in the league. He's certainly the best player on that team. But would Keegan Murray really be guarding Steph Curry? Now, I know the Golden State Warriors are going to try and switch Steph Curry onto Keegan Murray or any bigger defender that they possibly can that Curry can go up against. And maybe the Kings are game planning for that. But I have to imagine in a straight 5-on-5 defensive assignments, at least with the starting lineup, Keegan Murray is not going to get the assignment of chasing Steph Curry around the perimeter, is he? I was actually thinking about this today. Draymond Green, who he's naturally going to match up with at the 4, Draymond Green might actually be a really good defensive assignment for Keegan right out of the gate. Think about this a little bit. And this is not disrespectful to Draymond Green, or it's not intended to be. Maybe he or others would take it that way. But Draymond Green is not that difficult of a cover. Now, Draymond Green does excellent work for his teammates, setting his teammates up as a passer and as an off-ball screener and whatever. But Draymond Green is not going to kill you from the perimeter. He's not going to kill you by putting the ball on the floor. So if Keegan Murray is lining up against Draymond Green, he can sag off a little bit. Doesn't have to be too worried about Draymond Green's jump shot by any means. And he's not going to be isolated or targeted as much as I believed he would be coming into this playoff series. Now, that doesn't mean that, again, teams are going to try and run pick and rolls and force Keegan to switch off of Draymond and onto whoever that ball handler is, especially if that ball handler is Steph Curry. And again, maybe that's what Domantas Sabonis is alluding to in this clip. But I think Draymond Green would be the right defensive assignment for Keegan Murray right out of the gate, even if Green might be able to outmuscle Keegan a little bit. At that point, you can help him out and bring over a double team if you really want to, or say, hey, Keegan, you got to learn how to stand your ground when it comes to when Draymond and him trying to back you down. But if Domantas Sabonis is alluding to what the expectation is, which is Keegan Murray guarding Steph Curry, don't know quite how I feel about that. Speaking of Steph Curry, this video and footage comes from our sister station down in San Francisco at ABC7. They sent us a couple clips, one from Steve Kerr, one from Steph Curry, and the one from Curry is him talking about the Kings and kind of sharing what the Golden State Warriors should expect from the Kings in Game 1.
I think there should be confidence and excitement for them because they're doing something that hasn't been done in their franchise in a long time, and they've invested a lot into that journey. But we all know playoffs are different, and it's just, again, you just got to win 4 games and win them however you can. And we're excited about the opportunity we have in front of us, and got to expect that they're going to come out playing extremely well because they've shown that they're a good team all season, and we want to be ready for that challenge.
Finally, Golden State Warriors head coach Steve Kerr was asked about the time that he spent working with Mike Brown in Golden State, and Steve had, of course, a lot of nice things to say about Coach Brown.
Yeah, we texted, when the matchups came out. I think everybody on our building just feels so happy for Mike and strongly about, what he did for us while he was here, how much he contributed to our championships here and our culture and I learned so much from Mike, and it was just a great partnership. And so we miss him, but we're thrilled that he's had this amazing season. And as I said the other day, I mean, I'd be shocked if he didn't win the Coach of the Year award. He deserves it. He and his staff have been incredible. So, and now here we are going against each other. So it's, you express your love for each other, and then, the gloves come off, and you wait until after the series ends to communicate again. So that's how it works.
So we also learned today the full playoff schedule for the Sacramento Kings and Golden State Warriors. Of course, we know on Saturday night, the Kings will host the Golden State Warriors, a 5:30 tip-off for that one. Then Monday and Thursday, those are games 2 and game 3. So game 2 in Sacramento will be on Monday night, a 7 o'clock tip-off as per usual, that game on TNT. Game 3 Thursday, so a couple days off in between the games in Sacramento and the games in Golden State. Thursday, 4:20, which I'm sure will be interesting in San Francisco. The Kings and Warriors will meet for Game 3 inside the Chase Center. That's also a 7 o'clock tip on TNT. Then on Sunday, April 23rd, so there'll be 2 days off between Games 3 and Game 4, a early game, the Kings and Warriors at Chase Center, a 12:30 tip in the afternoon. So be ready for some matinee basketball. That game will be on ABC. And then if we get to games 5, 6, and 7, game 5 will be in Sacramento on Wednesday, the 26th. Friday, the 28th, will be game 6 in Golden State. And then game 7, if it goes that far, will be Sunday, the 30th of April. Times to be determined for tip-off on all 3 of those games. So we'll have to wait and see. Again, my prediction is this game or this series is going to go 6 or 7 games. I just feel like it is going to, regardless of who wins. But of course, we'll have to wait and see. Coming up in just a second, my in-studio ABC 10 roundtable with some of my colleagues about this playoff series coming up. But before that, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit, and it's the same thing when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know what part will fit, or you get your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop at eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Those of you who have listened to Locked On Kings this season know how special of a year it has been for me, this also being my first full year working at ABC 10 in the sports department. And it's fitting in so many ways for the Sacramento Kings to make the playoffs, for the playoffs to be against the Golden State Warriors, and for that Game 1 to be this Saturday on our airwaves at ABC 10. So I thought, you know what, I got to get my crew, I got to get my guys in here to help me out. My partner, Kevin John, in the ABC 10 sports department, Walt Gray, who not only is our lead anchor in the mornings, but Walt has a history of covering Sacramento Kings basketball, covering sports in Sacramento in general. And we're going to jump right into, I was a kid the last time the Kings made the playoffs. I was 12 years old. So I have a completely different perspective. Exactly. Yeah. Walt, Kevin, you guys were in the area or around the area. You understood what this meant to the city at that time. Do you have expectations of things repeating, like, for example, the Rattle Seattle series, when that ovation that the Kings got when they took the floor at Arco Arena for the first time? Do you expect things to repeat themselves, or do you expect things to be different this time because it's been so long?
First of all, I was not living here. I was living in Georgia the last time the Kings were in the playoffs, so I missed all of that stuff.
So maybe you shouldn't say anything about it then.
But Walt, I think I am still going to take this though. So yeah, I was out of the state the last time the Kings were in here.
He's a Stockton native.
I am a Stockton native, moved out of Stockton in 2000. So pretty much when I moved out, the Kings became extremely good.
So you need to leave.
Exactly. You know what, I'll just come back after this.
See you later. Perfect.
Kevin.
But no, really, the thing I want to say in regard to that, you said once they took the floor for that first time in Arco Arena and the thunderous applause.
Yeah.
My issue with this, and I shouldn't say my issue, but just my thing with this particular series after the 16 season, 17-year playoff drought, is I don't think the reception will be the same this time around because of the opponent they're taking on in the first round. I think if they were taking on, let me explain. I think if they were taking on any other opponent out of the Western Conference in the first round, you would hear that thunderous, exuberated, excited applause from the Kings fans in Golden One Center on Saturday when they take the court. But because they're going against the Golden State Warriors team, who has a significant amount of fans, not just who are going to travel over here, but in this region. We saw it when we were at Golden One Friday night, and it sounded, Walt, no lie, for a minute it sounded like it was Chase Center in there because there were so many Golden State Warriors fans in there. So yes, to answer your question, Matt, there's a level of excitement. Let's not deny that. It's been 16 seasons since the Sacramento area has seen their team in the playoffs. So of course you're going to have natural excitement, but because they're taking on Golden State, who has a significant fan base in the Sacramento area, I don't think it can be what it would be had they were taking on the Clippers in the first round, the Pelicans in the first round, Minnesota in the first round.
I think it's going to be super loud. And I was in the crowd in that last playoff game when they hosted Seattle because the Kings had won a game up in Seattle at the time. So coming back, George Karl was coaching Seattle at the time. The team came out for the opening warm-ups, and they played The Boys Are Back in Town. And I have never in my life, and I've been to a game or two, heard loudness like that. They say sometimes it's so loud you can't even think or hear yourself think. That crowd that night was as crazy. We were like, you guys are home. We're going to be crazy. Our emotion is going to try to push you to a victory. To Kevin's point, the crowd will be mixed. Saturday. Of course there's going to be Warrior fans here. Obviously, some King season ticket holders or maybe, who are allowed extra tickets are going to put those up on Ticketmaster or whatnot. Warrior fans are going to grab those. So, of course, there's going to be Warrior fans there. But it's going to be super loud. And I'll tell you why. The arrival that you guys covered at the airport the other night. If I'm a Kings fan or a potential free agent, and I see all of those people at the airport to welcome me home, I'm thinking, that's a college vibe I want a piece of. And I think that's a good look at our fans. They'll be at an airport at midnight to welcome you guys back. Where does that happen? Atlanta? No. Anywhere? No, it doesn't. That's what's unique about the fan experience here.
What you're speaking to is something that De'Aaron Fox has talked a lot about. He talks about and compares Sacramento fans to his time at Kentucky.
Yes.
And how the fan bases are very similar. You're talking about kind of that college atmosphere. And he's talked about wanting throughout his career to be part of the team that brings playoffs back because that's the expectation. The reality is, if we talk about ticket prices, Sacramento, the get-in-the-door price as of right now is around $400 to get into Game 1. Yeah. Very expensive, one of the most expensive tickets in the history of NBA playoffs. That demand is being driven up not just because of Warrior fans who want to get in the building. That demand is being driven up by Sacramento Kings fans who are coming back and are wanting to be there as well. I think one thing that's misconstrued, I understand exactly what you're saying, Kevin, about the Warrior fans that are going to be in the building. Warrior fans aren't the only one with cars. Like, Sacramento Kings fans are also going to be traveling to Chase Center, which is actually at this point in time the cheaper ticket, too.
Yeah.
So I don't know if people are looking at it as an advantage or not. It's certainly going to have an impact on the atmosphere, but it feeds into the college atmosphere like you're talking about, where every single bucket there's going to be cheering, there's going to be jeering, and I think that adds to the atmosphere more than takes away.
Well, yeah, let me be very clear. I didn't mean it in the sense that you're not going to hear as many cheers or it's not going to be as loud because there's going to be a whole lot of Golden State Warrior fans there. If anything, I think the Golden State Warrior fans and the Kings fans together are just going to allow to the decibel level of it. What I meant by that is you're not going to hear all 18,351 fans in Golden One Center going in an uproar for the Kings.
I got what you were saying.
That's exactly. But yes, it's going to be loud as heck.
Yeah, you made sense. It's true. There's going to be a lot of visiting team fans there, and they're not going to be cheering for the Kings. Right? I mean, that's a fact.
Well, one of the major differences from the last time the Kings were in the playoffs to where we're at now is they were playing in a building in Atomas, Arco Arena. Very fond memories of that building. Love that building. Basically a second childhood home of mine. Out there in the fields, right? Now you've got the Golden One Center in the center of downtown Sacramento. So I'm curious to see the biggest difference for the city is, what does it look like outside the arena? We're going to have 18,000 people. Kings fans, Warrior fans, doesn't matter. 18,000 people are going to be in the arena. But downtown Commons is set up to allow for fans. The Kings are already doing watch parties like that. The restaurants, bars, hotels around the area.
Yeah.
I think the build-up almost to Game 1 over the course of this week, and even Saturday morning up until tip-off at 5:30, we're going to see a downtown element that the city dreamed about when they built or planned the arena that is finally maybe coming to fruition.
I think that's a good point, and I think Warrior fans and Kings fans will mingle okay together. I don't think that there really hasn't been a rivalry. So I think the fans will be like decked out. It's going to be fine. It's not like, Detroit fans coming into Boston in the 80s where it's on. The fans are on each other. This is not, I don't think these two fan bases are like that. I think it's going to be fine.
Yeah, at least for the most part, at least from my experience, I've seen both fan bases really classy with one another, even though there is that intense, opposition and just competitiveness against one another. Now, granted, too, Walt, we've never seen both of these teams in the postseason at the same time. Better yet, they've never met in the postseason before. So that may intensify, obviously, the fan bases between each one. Because even now, like I was telling Matt last night, I've been looking at Twitter, and I know Twitter is never the best place to go when you're trying to get the feel or the mood of the anticipation of an event. But there's been a lot of trash talk going on Twitter, there's been a lot of Kings fans, vehemently, Warriors fans, saying, Warriors, we're already looking to our round 2 opponent. We're already looking ahead to round 2 because we know the Kings do not stand a chance to us. And I've seen a lot of Kings fans clap back on social media. So while I do believe that both fan bases are pretty classy, since this is their first playoff meeting, I do think there might be a little bit of intensity.
The Kings have to earn respect. And I think right now the Warriors have won so many world championships, and they're favored heavily to beat the Kings in this series, which is pretty amazing. I think the Warrior fans are like kind of this to the Kings. Until you get out of the crib, right? Literally a crib, you're not going to be taken seriously. I think Kings fans want to be taken seriously, their team seriously right now. This has to be earned. And this series shows if this is their time or not. But Warrior fans is like, whatever. They're just making noise.
You absolutely have to prove it on the playoff stage. Like, nobody doubts that. And I think it's used overly as like cliche now. Playoffs are different than regular season is. Of course, the intensity level is higher. Defense is more intense. It's easier to play defense for a 7-game series than it is to get up and play defense 82 games a year when opponents are changing every single day. So I understand the differences between playoff basketball and regular season basketball. However, that doesn't mean we take everything that the Kings did during the regular season and throw it out. You talk about the Kings being potentially underdogs or are underdogs, heavy favorites. That's a position they're more than comfortable being in. It's a position that they've been in all season long, to where they've proven time and time. I mean, there's just been different. They got off to the hot start. Oh, this is cute. They're hot. They're going to slow down. They get to the All-Star break. Oh, all these teams have made deals. The Kings are going to fall apart now that these games matter. They handle that as well as they did. They secure a 3rd seed. It's just the goalposts keep moving, which I understand. Again, you have to prove it. But to me, you're putting the Sacramento Kings in a position that they've been in all season long, and they've proven they were able to overcome.
Well, the advantage to being in that position is, guess what? The Kings have no pressure on them coming into this playoff series the way that Golden State does. And it's ironic for me to say that because obviously the Kings are the 3rd seed, the Golden State is the 6th seed, so typically you think the 3rd seed with home court advantage has all the pressure on them. This series is not that way. And part of the reason why is, like you said, nobody's expecting the Kings to just come through in this playoff round to just demolish the Golden State Warriors. We know the Golden State Warriors pedigree. We know the 4 championships they've won in the last, 6 years, 7 years, whatever it is. We know their makeup. They're the defending champs. So they don't have as much pressure coming into this. They have much more pressure coming into this, the Sacramento Kings. So I think that underdog mentality that you were talking about, really the Kings can use to their advantage and benefit. We've seen the Kings in pressure situations this year when pressure was on them. They did not rise to the competition. One was 2 weeks ago, their home game against Minnesota, where they had an opportunity to clinch a playoff berth on their home court. And then we saw it again a week and a half later when they had the opportunity to clinch the division title and didn't do that. So I almost feel when the Kings are in pressure situations, and these Kings, the 2022-23 Kings, they don't necessarily play up to their ability. So if I'm a Kings fan, I like the fact that they're the underdog. I like the fact that nobody's given them the benefit of the doubt because they have nothing to lose. They have no pressure on them. They can go and basically prove the doubters, the naysayers, the haters wrong like they've been doing all season. Nobody had the Kings at the number 3 seed at this point in time and the end of the regular season this year.
I think what Kevin is trying to say.
Break it.
This is gravy. Everybody should relax and celebrate the season that the Kings just had, finishing third in the Western Conference, okay? And this is why Monty has built this so slowly, right? That's why there wasn't a big trade at the All-Star break or any major things going on. There was one focus this year. The focus was to not just get in the play-in, but to make the playoffs and legit. Anything that happens from here on out is gravy. It's gravy on the biscuit, right? It really, in the offseason, now we start to think about, okay, we're going to build a team to win the West. And maybe next year, a team that could win the NBA championship. And that's part of Monty. Everybody chill out, man. I'm not going to make deals for the sake of making deals. This is the plan. We're following the plan. It would be great to beat the Warriors, right? But we're in gravy mode. If it doesn't happen, it's building slowly.
Yeah, the term that I've used is playing with house money. And
yes.
To be fair, Mike Brown is trying to establish championship tendencies in this team right now. This team is operating with the belief that they're going to make it to the Western Conference Finals. They're going to make it to the NBA Finals. You want them to think that way, whether they actually make it or not. From my perspective, though, what I'm looking forward to most, win or lose, is we're going to get 4 games of context that we've never had, or we haven't had in 16 years, and some of these guys have never had. We're going to see if De'Aaron Fox is that guy. We're going to see if Domantas Sabonis can be that Robin to Fox's Batman. We're going to see if the supporting cast that Monty has put together is really a cast that's capable. I think back to when the Kings got into the playoffs and played against the Utah Jazz. They won a game against the Utah Jazz and then got wiped the rest of the series, essentially. But we exited that series, or Kings fans exited that series going, okay, we belong here. And the next year, the Kings built upon that, beat the Utah Jazz, and put on those 2002 runs and the deep runs that they... Yeah. So will this be a run where the Kings lose in the first round of the Warriors, but we say, okay, we belong here?
Yeah.
Or is there, oh man, we still have these massive holes? Or no, this team is better than even we expected, and they're making it 2-3 rounds deep?
Yeah.
I think, honestly, if the Sacramento Kings get swept in this first round, and keep in mind that's with home court advantage, of course, I think that's a really ugly, terrible taste in your mouth to end the season, to go out that way. The reason I say that is, okay, we can look at what the Kings have done this season. They historically had the best offense ever as far as points per game, but their defense has been absolutely gutter for this. It's been gutter the last several years. It was dead last in, 2021 and 2022. So my issue, and I'm looking at that, and I'm holding Mike Brown accountable because I remember that's the one thing that he said when he came into this team. He straight up said, if you don't play defense, you're not going to be on the floor. And he has not been held accountable in that respect. Now, obviously, no one thought the Kings, hold on, Matt, no one thought the Kings were going to have the #1 offense in the league. So when you have such a great offense, you can hide behind that if you have poor defense, which the Kings have been able to do this year. But when you go against a team like Golden State, your vulnerabilities are going to be exposed. What you're weak at, the other team is going to taste blood and sense that, and they're going to be able to exploit that. So my whole thing is, if they do get swept in this first round, particularly due to poor defense, then yeah, that's terrible, and Mike Brown needs to be held accountable because he's the one who was supposed to bring in this defensive mindset that was going to change the culture.
Okay, so what I think you're going to see from the Kings in the postseason is their fourth quarter defense this year, because they were ranked 7th in the league, something like that.
In the top 10.
Yes, in fourth quarter defense. Your fourth quarter defense is your playoff defense. I think they're going to step up, and they know these games are intense. They're an offense-first team. They're like Loyola Marymount with Hank Gathers and Bo Kimball. All the focus was on offense. All the focus was on outscoring your opponent by 2. If it was 165 to 163, that's a W. So what? We gave up 163. We won the game. I think you're going to see the Kings really lock it down, and I think Mike has been making some moves, especially like with Alex Len getting extended minutes, because Mike Brown knows in the postseason people like Alex Len are going to be needed in certain matchups, and certainly you're going to need a big. I was wondering, where's Alex Len all year? And then, lo and behold, the last 10 games, it's been mostly Alex Len. You know, and there's a reason for that, because I think it's all part of a defensive plan he has. He's not some chump like you say, but I think that I'm just kidding. I think the defense is going to step up, and people aren't thinking that all year long. They've just been. I think you're going to see their fourth quarter defense.
See, I think the defense is being blown way out of proportion. I really do, because defensively, we're talking about a team that is not good. Nobody's going to claim the Sacramento Kings are good, but we're talking about a Golden State Warriors team that is not good either. The Golden State Warriors gave up one less point per game than the Sacramento Kings, and 1 point is the difference of 5 or 6 spots in a defensive ranking. So 1 point is not that big of a deal. The strength of the Golden State Warriors falls on how they can score. The Sacramento Kings can beat the Golden State Warriors at their own game. The Kings can outscore the Warriors if they have to.
That's a fair point.
Now, should they always rely on that? No. And like we've discussed, and Walt,
they're going to have poor shooting
too. They're going to have poor shooting nights for sure. They're also going to have nights where there's 2 minutes left and the game is tied. That's a position that the Warriors have been in on that stage that the Kings haven't been in, and we don't have the context to be able to say confidently the Kings can handle that.
That's a
what I'm waiting
different
to see.
hot light than postseason, 2 minutes left.
Right.
Curry and Thompson aren't even cracking a sweat.
So De'Aaron Fox is the clutch player of the year this year. He looked excellent in that time. Does he elevate that to the next stage? Exactly. This is the context that we need to get. But I think so many people take the Kings' defense and use that to undermine what they do offensively when the Kings' offense has turned the best defenses in the Western Conference into statistically the worst. The Phoenix Suns are the best defense in the Western Conference, the 4th best defense in the NBA, period. The Sacramento Kings, when they played them, put up 122 points per game, which would make them 29th.
Right.
The Kings' offense is so good that it can negate defense, and we remember this. The NBA today is an offensive-driven league.
Of course
I understand defense wins championships, that cliche. Defense is important in the playoffs, but the Kings' defense isn't so bad that it negates the offense, just like the Warriors' defense isn't so good that it negates the Kings' offense.
I think, and Kevin's probably going to say this, that defense is extremely important in the last couple of minutes. That's where you're going to see.
Absolutely.
In every team. And that's why somebody like an Alex Len may come in with 9 seconds left. And now he's kind of gotten his sweat. And now he's ready to go. But it'll be an open, crazy game. But I do think in the last 2 or 3 minutes, the Warriors know how to lock that down on both sides. And the Kings are a question mark. We think they'll do it. We have to see it.
Well, here's another thing too, Kevin. And we talked about this too. If the Kings go down 0-2 in a series, or they're down by a game, we don't know if they're going to panic or not. We know for the fact with the Golden State Warriors, if the Kings win the first 2 games of the series and the Warriors go 0-2 back to Golden State, they're not going to panic.
No, they're not.
That's another element of it too.
They're home.
Yeah, they've been there, and just to kind of piggyback off of that, like we've been saying throughout this whole conversation, they have the experience. They've been there. They know what it takes to win a championship. So I think that is what is going to hurt the Kings in this particular moment. They don't know what it's like. We just saw, what was that, 5 years ago? Golden State was down 3-1 to the Oklahoma City Thunder in the Western Conference Finals. And then they come back and then go into the NBA Finals where they lose to the Cavaliers after being up 3-1. But still, they've been in these situations. They know what it takes. The Kings will likely, I shouldn't say will likely because I don't know, but the question is, will they panic in this situation? If the Kings lose both of their home games to start the series.
You can't go 0-2 back to San Francisco.
Correct.
I think they have to win both games.
I do.
They have to win both at home because I'm not assuming they're going to win the next 2 in San Francisco. And they need
That's a hard building to win in.
They need to hold home court. And if they lose game 1, I'm thinking there's trouble. If they lose the game Saturday, to me, there's a problem here.
I think it depends on what Game 2 looks like. And the reason I say that is because the Sacramento Kings have shown an ability all season long to respond to bad losses. They haven't lost 3 straight since November. So they've done a really, really good job of cutting off losing streaks before they happen. This team has responded really well. So what do they look like in Game 2? They lose Game 1, which I hope they don't, of course. But they lose Game 1. They come out in Game 2, and they're down 10-0 at the beginning of the game. Okay, now panic buttons are starting to be hit a little bit, even though this Kings team can close the gap really, really quickly. But Sacramento's shown an ability, I think, they've even though they don't have playoff series experience, they've shown flashes of being able to handle the ups and downs of a series, and I think the fact that Mike Brown comes from the championship Warriors just last year helps with that a lot.
Yeah, we could be overemphasizing the fact that they haven't been in the playoffs before, and we've talked about this so many times with other sports. It's like, well, this team has 5 seniors starting and all of NCAA tournament experience against these. And it's like, it goes the other way. Yeah. You never can lock anything down, although we are on Locked On.
Yeah, that is true.
Yes, very locked on. When do we get the gear, by the way?
I don't know. I need to talk
Wait a minute. I'm okay without it. I'm just Who's doing the T-shirts here?
Walt on fire tonight.
No,
on today. But the thing I was going to say, and just to kind of piggyback off what Walt said, I do think Game 1 is critical for the Kings. I think it's absolutely critical that they come out and win that first game and set the tone early on in the series. If they lose Game 1, I think it's I don't want to say impossible, but I say there's a 95% chance they don't come back and win the series. Just because so many people are going to be looking at that. And think about to the players on the Kings, what that does to them mentally, psychologically, when you let the defending champs come into your building, game one, and then beat you on your home court.
This episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. Grand slams, no-hitters, and double plays are back. There's no better place to get in on the MLB action than at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Of course, with all the great NBA playoff action, you can jump in there as well. It's because right now, new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. What that is you bet on you make your first gamble, your first bet, and you happen to lose. Don't worry about it. You're not just going to lose your money and have to deposit more or just quit and never play again. They will give you up to $1,000 back in bonus bets for you to make that money back and make even more money on top of that. It's like an insurance policy, completely free. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up, place your first bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. So don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball.
The expectation, I believe, is that the Golden State Warriors are going to walk into the Golden One Center, are going to walk into this game and go, we're the dynasty, you're the fun little story, and we're going to show you completely right then and there. Yeah. And I think anybody who has that expectation, one, hasn't been paying close enough attention to Kings basketball this season, number one, which I don't necessarily blame based off how the last 16 years have gone. And number two is I think they're in for a rude awakening. That's the thing, is I think the Sacramento Kings are more than capable of surprising a lot of people and will surprise a lot of people with how they play. Yeah. The Golden State Warriors put up a 55-point first quarter against the Portland Trailblazers the other day.
Who was Portland playing, though?
Exactly. But
no one.
Regardless.
They don't care.
But it's based off, like Klay Thompson caught fire in that first quarter.
Right? Okay, well, he had a lot of open looks. He's going to hit every open look where there's nobody within 10 feet of him.
So the Warriors are capable of exploding offensively at any given time. So are the Sacramento Kings. The Sacramento Kings scored 43 points against the Denver Nuggets in the first quarter.
Well, Denver wasn't playing anybody, though.
But it doesn't. The last few games are like JV games.
Right. The point is, the Golden State Warriors can explode and have an incredibly good offensive quarter, and the Kings will still be within 11, 12 points.
But, Matt, that's exactly why I said, just to kind of bring this home earlier on, why I do think it's going to come down to defense. Because we know that both of these teams can score the rock. I think every game this series is going to be in the 120s, 130s scoring rise. We know that both of these teams can score, and they can score in similar ways, which is behind the arc. We understand that. But that's why I keep saying I do feel that the X factor, per se, or what this game is going to come down to, is defense. And I feel that the Warriors have the edge when it comes to that versus the Sacramento Kings.
Well, then the Kings should have the edge offensively because they're historically the best offense in NBA history, which is undeniable at this point. Plus, what gives the Sacramento Kings the edge, in my opinion, Walt, is the Kings have a loaded roster of different guys that can beat you. They have to be worried about Domantas Sabonis because there's nobody on that Warriors roster that can handle Sabonis.
No,
Nobody can. De'Aaron Fox as well. Yeah. But guys like Kevin Huerter, Keegan Murray, any guy can go off at any given time that the Warriors have to keep an eye on. If those role players aren't hitting their shots, the Kings are in trouble. But if they are, you can't stop this team. They've won game after game after game with 6 or 7 players in double figures.
I'm glad you mentioned Sabonis because it's been a long time since I've seen anybody like him. There's a guy who does not take any plays off. We call him Junkyard Dog at home, and I had to show the kids the real Junkyard Dog wrestler, and I said, "This is who Sabonis is, and this is a guy who I think if he wants to change it up in the postseason, look for his shot first. I think most defenders know when he dribbles down, he's a pass first guy, but I think if he has a lot of open looks, he is too unselfish. Does that make sense? Yeah. Shoot the ball, dude. You're open. But he's such a team guy. And again, if he looks for his shot, I don't think the defense is going to be figuring on shot first. And that might open up the passes. Let's take it back to this team and the last team that made the playoffs. It's been since then, probably the Peja Bibby, not Weber because he was hurt, but Peja Bibby, Vlade, Pollard. Those guys passed like this team passes, especially with Sabonis to the cutting Huerter. Those two have some kind of Jedi mind thing going on now. And that's refreshing to see because I watch Boston a lot and I grew up as a Celtics fan. Their offense is a mess. All it is Jason Tatum launching threes. That guy has the ability to go to the hole anytime he wants. The Kings team pass first, cutters. It's like watching Princeton play under Pete Carrill back in the day.
Yeah.
That's not what NBA teams do. It's very much dribble, 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 shoot. Kings is very refreshing to watch.
Which is why I really think we have to question defensively how the Warriors are going to be able to handle that, because that Warriors roster does have some good, solid defenders. There are going to be times when Gary Payton is thrown, Gary Payton II is going to be thrown on De'Aaron Fox. But Steph Curry is not a good defender. And is Steph Curry going to be chasing Fox? Is he going to be chasing Herter? Because whoever Steph Curry is on, they will make him run with the dribble handoffs and things like that.
Let's wear him out.
And it's going to be, again, that's the context of how the Warriors are going to be able to respond to this. Again, they're the defending champs, so you have to give them the benefit of the doubt that they'll find some way to overcome it. But I would love to see 35 minutes of Steph Curry chasing whoever his assignment is, because they will run him.
Well, of course, and we're saying that Steph Curry, whoever's going to be on him, they're going to be tired out as well, because we know how much off-the-ball movement Steph Curry does in order to get his shots and be able to get his. So I feel that goes both ways.
That's expected from the Warriors. Like we come in knowing that that's the expectation. I don't think people are expecting the Sacramento Kings to do the same thing and be capable of beating the Warriors at that same game. Steph Curry can win a game by himself. We know that.
Stick off night on him for 12 minutes here and there, right? I mean, we can break it up a little bit, right?
Davion is a really good on-ball defender. My concern with Davion is I don't feel he's the best off-ball defender. He gets beat a lot on backdoor cuts and things of that sort. So he's great if the ball, if Curry has the ball and he's on you, absolutely. There's a reason they call him off night. My concern off-ball and Steph Curry is someone who runs so much, literally, around in a circle.
You're saying off night, off the ball is a problem.
Okay. Way to bring it on.
Okay.
So that's poetic.
The reality is, like, Steph Curry's going to get his.
He is.
Are the other Warriors going to beat you? Are you going to allow Jordan Poole to beat you? Klay Thompson can get hot at any time. Klay Thompson loves playing against the Kings. He just loves playing against. He always plays well against the Sacramento Kings. But if Steph, Klay, and Poole or Wiggins is coming back, we don't know what he's going to look like, but Wiggins was excellent for them in the playoffs last year.
Wiggins.
Are three different Warriors going to team up and beat you? Because if they do, then they can score with you.
Yep.
But if they don't, your five guys scoring 15 to 20 points can outscore Steph and Klay going for 30.
But then you're also assuming that no one else on the Warriors lineup is going to step up and have a big game. We saw in the playoffs last year, Kevon Looney had like a few 20-12 games.
Sure.
We saw, well, of course, Wiggins, who we don't know who he's going to be. But then also look at the other people that they've been inserting this year. Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, all of these guys off the bench who have actually been pretty solid and have had points of greatness. So you're coming from the assumption that it's just going to be Poole, Thompson, and Steph who hurt the Kings, when in fact you can look on the bench of the Warriors and say, okay, well, who's going to be the X factor this game? Who's going to step up this game? So I think you kind of have to give them the benefit of the doubt in that same respect.
No, I think we're saying the same thing. We're just saying it in different words. The Kings can't allow those Kumingas, those Moody's, and guys to beat them off the bench. And the expectation shouldn't be that they will beat them off the bench, because the Kings have the better depth.
Yeah, I don't know Steve Kerr is actually drawing up plays for Kuminga or Moody. I think they get a lot in garbage time, and that's, it takes me kind of back to Dennis Rodman, who never had a play called for him, but his log would be 40 minutes played, 0 for 0 from the field, 22 rebounds.
Yeah.
Okay. Right?
He does the dirty work.
Specific guys who are in to play defense, rebound, and get some garbage points. Right? But I think you're right. Wiggins, Poole, Thompson, Curry. Those are the guys you got to really sweat. The other guys are going to get putbacks and whatnot, but nothing.
Even DiVincenzo, he's someone who's as of recently has had some really good games. And obviously the Kings know DiVincenzo very well.
Yeah, and he'd love to burn us.
Yeah, exactly.
He left here with a bad taste in his mouth. But you know what? He didn't shoot that well when he was here, and that's why they didn't really make a hard line on signing him. He was so in his time here, and they really coveted him. They tried to get him before, and then when they finally got him, we all thought he was going to stick. It wasn't a good fit. But last year's team may have not been a good fit for anybody. Remember losing to Boston by like 60? I mean, last year's team was just awful. Maybe DiVincenzo would have done better with this year's team. I think he would have had some nice looks.
Yeah. I think the reality of this season that's going to be made very, very clear immediately is that the Sacramento Kings are much more of a threat and much more of a challenge than maybe Golden State Warriors fans or maybe the NBA period expects.
Underestimated, Matt.
That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to win the series.
It doesn't.
The Warriors could still win the series. But I know Steve Kerr, and I know that Golden State Warriors team is not going to roll into Sacramento Game 1 thinking about their round 2 opponent. I wish they would, because the Kings would jump on them.
Just the Warriors fans are thinking about
that. Exactly. They're not going to do that. So we're not talking about the team undermining the Sacramento Kings necessarily. But people are still going to be surprised that this Kings team is as dynamic and dangerous as they are. And in many ways, I think the Kings present obstacles that the Warriors have never had to overcome in playoffs before when it comes to their offensive ability.
I still think that 9.5-point spread is insulting. And one of the best bets I ever saw was the over-under on wins at the start of the season. I think it was 34. And I'm like, 34? They're going to win 40. And it's like I'm making phone calls like, you know, you can't put much down to make on something like that. But that was a layup bet to me that they were going to win more than 34 games. And so that's the national feeling about this team, and that may go into why the Kings are a 9.5-point underdog on their own floor, having finished third versus the Warriors sixth, and the Kings are at home. That spread doesn't make any sense unless these guys who are making the spread know something that we don't, and I'm not sure that they do.
We'll end with this. Instead of asking you for the broad who you think is going to win the series, let's just focus on game one because that's the build-up for this week. We're coming into, it's Sunday. It's the next day. Kevin, you and I are hosting a Toyota Sports Extra show.
Yeah.
Are we talking about a Kings win or are we talking about a Kings loss, and why?
You know, this is the thing.
You just say it, man.
This is the thing.
It's a tie. He said draw, apparently.
He's going to say that you already said that you don't think they're going to win.
That's
game
okay.
one.
The expectation is that.
I told, and this is like I told you last night, Matt. I would love for nothing more than for me to be wrong, for the Sacramento Kings to absolutely take it to the Golden State Warriors and make them feel.
Say it. Just say it.
And make them feel less than. But I do not see the Sacramento Kings game one coming in and obliterating the Warriors on their home court. I just don't see. I think it's not going to be a 9-point win.
Okay.
Absolutely. I don't think it's going to be a 9-point win, but I do feel that the Golden State Warriors are coming in with a lot of confidence, a lot of swag, as they should. They've earned that right. And the fact that they were like, we were just there playing on Friday. We have a lot of fans there. This is not a road game because we know how bad the Warriors have been on the road this year. What were they, like 7 or 8 and like 40 or 30? I mean, they were horrific. They're not thinking about this as a road game for them. So I think, honestly, mentally for them, they're thinking, okay, this is just up 80. We have a lot of fans there. We're going to go in and take care of business.
So you're taking the Kings with 9.5. You're going to take the bet. You're going to say the Kings are going to lose by less than 9.5.
They're going to lose by less than 9.5.
Okay, so he's taking the Kings in the points.
So what I think is funny is the same way Kevin thinks the Warriors should take confidence from that final game in Sacramento is the reason why I think the Kings should take confidence from that game. Because the Sacramento Kings rolled out a lineup not featuring their 2 All-NBA, All-Pro players and Kevin Huerter, who's one of their most important shooters. And in 2 separate instances, they were down by 17 points in the first half, came back to got it within 1, went down by 20 points in the third quarter. Before the end of the quarter, they were in single digits once again, and that was their second and third stringers doing that. I don't think the Golden State Warriors looked good at all in that game.
They were bad that game.
I think they were making a lot of mistakes. Now, I also expect them to look a lot better in this game because of the playoffs and what's on the line. But I don't think any Warriors fan should be looking at what happened in Game 4 of the between these two teams this regular season and say, that gives me confidence. When in Game 3, the only time the Kings and Warriors matched up for real in Sacramento, the Kings beat them, and the Warriors were at full strength in that game. Wiggins was playing.
I don't know if the Kings can win this series, but I feel very confident they're going to win Game 1 at home because this is a very important game to the Kings. It's not that big of a game for the Warriors. It really isn't. Game 1 on the road, they know they're going to have 2, maybe 3 at home. I think it's huge for the Kings, and I really feel good that they're going to win Game 1. The series, I have no idea. As the series goes longer and longer, the Warriors probably have more of an advantage. I don't see the Kings winning in San Francisco, but I do see the Kings winning Saturday, right here on ABC 10.
Big thank you to Kevin and Walt for joining me here in the studio for that roundtable. Hope you enjoyed that. Kings practice availability will be also in the morning tomorrow on Thursday. So I'll have probably another a podcast similar to this with what's happening and news and notes and everything. From there, any questions that you want to ask me just about this series or previewing this series, please send them to me at MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com, and leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. Appreciate your support as always. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.